Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. And today I wanted to talk about the value of having people that you can talk to in your recovery circle, and having people that you can talk to about your feelings and the importance of expressing yourself when you're having difficult times in recovery and in life in general. So I'm going to read a little bit from Living Sober, a book put out by Alcoholics Anonymous World Services, and then I'm going to talk some about my experience with this. So they're talking about the importance of reaching out to people, especially when you feel like you need a drink. Earlier in the book, they talked about the importance of putting off that first drink and saying, okay, if you get a craving, say, well, I'm just not going to have that first drink for the next 30 minutes, and seeing how that works out, and then trying to do that again and again and again. But they acknowledge that that little trick, that little method will not always work successfully. It's sometimes difficult to keep up with, and that you have to take it a step further, which is connecting with other people. And here's what they say about that. Um, Not just for cravings, but for general emotional problems. Sometimes, for no apparent reason, we found ourselves suddenly, inexplicably undergoing an onslaught of anxiety, fear, terror, even panic, which made no sense. This happens to lots of human beings, of course, not just to alcoholics or addicts. When we told the truth about the way we really felt, what we were doing, and what we wanted to do, we found we were perfectly understood. We got total empathy, not sympathy, empathy. Everyone we called, remember, had been in exactly the same boat sometime or other, and they all remembered vividly. I'm going to repeat that last line because I think it's important for people to remember this. Everyone we called had been in exactly the same boat at some time or another, and they all remembered vividly. And I'll get to why I think that's so important in just a second. More frequently than not, only a few moments of conversation made our thought of drink disappear. Sometimes we got practical, eye opening information, or gentle, indirect guidance, or tough, direct, heart to heart advice. Sometimes we found ourselves laughing. So I think one of the things that I have struggled with my entire adult life and in recovery is feeling like nobody's going to understand the way that I feel. And I think that's a somewhat natural way for everybody to feel. I also think it's a byproduct of the way that a lot of us are brought up, and speaking candidly, a lot of us are brought up in a world that tells us we're special. If you watch any episode of a show like Sesame Street, there's talk of how special each individual is, and I think that's important. And the meaning behind that kind of language is very, very kind and loving, and it's a noble thing to teach a child that they're special and that there's certainly no malice behind it. Um, but I also feel like it has an undesirable effect for some of us of giving us the feeling that we are alone in the emotions, the pain, and the sorrow that we experience, which could not be further from the truth. But when we feel like we're special and there's no one else in the world like us, then it's easy to make the logical jump that there's no one else in the world that feels the same things we do. And so our natural proclivity is to, when we feel negative emotions, not talk about them because we doubt that anybody else could understand them. What AA and other spiritual recovery programs teach us is that that's not true. Especially for addicts and alcoholics, other people in recovery have a very, very good understanding of these emotions. These emotions are at the heart of, pain and sorrow and anxiety and heartbreak. These are at the heart of what it means to be human, and every human being experiences them to some degree, but addicts experience them to an extreme degree. And because of that, we're superbly qualified to speak with each other about these emotions and help each other to cope with them without resorting to drinking or using drugs. You know, a lot of times when I am feeling emotional and when I'm having problems with, keeping my head centered, with anxiety, with fear, with anger, just talking about that with another addict, just acknowledging those emotions with another addict is enough to make me feel more at peace. Doesn't make the emotions go away, but that's not the point. The point is to help me get to a place where I can more reasonably cope with the emotions without going to alcohol or drugs to try to help me do that. So I have found it extremely important to maintain my connection with other alcoholics and addicts, to keep those lines open, but to also remember that when it comes to these negative emotions that I feel, I am not special. I am one of millions and billions of people who feel these emotions. And with the spiritual programs I'm a part of, with AA, for example, I've got a built-in network of hundreds of thousands of people I can talk to who have experienced these same emotions in the same way and can sympathize and empathize with me about what it feels like. And more often than not, when I speak to them, they've got some kind of advice that I needed to hear. And the other thing that I'll point out is that, we, especially in early recovery, we can hesitate to call someone because we don't want to inconvenience them. Look, I can tell you, as someone who's received these calls from people who are hurting, who need someone to talk to, it is, I'm grateful when I receive these calls. These calls give me an opportunity to connect with someone as well. And you'd be surprised how often those calls come at a time where I need some connection too. And maybe I just didn't know it. So don't hesitate to call people. We've got to put ourselves out there in order to make these connections. And if you call someone and it's not a good time for them, that's nothing personal. Just go on to the next person, because that's what we have to do to work together to keep ourselves and each other sober, productive, and in a peaceful place in our recovery. Hope you have a good day. I'll see you back here tomorrow.